This is Toledo Symphony Lab, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of classical music from WGTE Public Media and your Toledo Symphony. I'm Brad Cresswell. Joining me today in the studio are the Toledo Symphony's president and CEO, Zach Vassar. We also have the TSO's music director, Elaine Trudell, and we have a special return guest. That would be Brett Loney, who is the TSO's Director of Development. Welcome to all of you, especially you, Brett. Welcome.
Good morning. Welcome.
I said this was a return appearance for you. You made your debut. Your first day on the job, you walked in. We threw you in front of a microphone. The rest, as they say, is history. I mean, this occurred in 2019. It was pre-pandemic. Now you're 697 days into the job. So my question to you is the same one I asked you on day one. How's it going?
It's going well. You know, Zach didn't mention that we'd be starting a pandemic 4 months after I began with the symphony. But,
I also didn't tell you you're going to be on the radio on your first day.
That's true. He's like, just show up, watch the broadcast. And
I don't think those two are related, though.
I just like to keep some tricks up my sleeve and make sure that Brett's, as agile as he promised. And so far he is.
It is never dull. But it's been a wonderful journey over now almost 2 years of working with the symphony and, all the things that we've done through the pandemic to keep serving the community. I mean, it really was an incredible time to watch how this organization responded to the need to keep the arts in our community and to keep presenting great music to this community and really around the world with all that we've done.
Well, one of the things that the TSO is known for during the pandemic is keeping people employed, right? I mean, that was a big challenge for many arts institutions. So kudos to all of you for making that possible. Brett, we talked about this briefly last time, and today we're talking about a wonderful, longtime supporter. I mean, I don't even want to use the word supporter because it's so much more deep than that. I'm talking about Richard P. Anderson, or Dick Anderson, as people who knew him called him. You're doing a concert, a memorial concert for Dick Anderson, some of the music that he enjoyed over the years. We're going to talk about that today. But first, Brett, tell us, I don't know if we covered this last time, but what does a director of development do? I mean, what is the role of development in the nonprofit world?
Great question. At its essence, what we do is support the mission of the organization by raising funds to make that mission possible. So we get to work with great community partners and on occasion great individuals like Dick Anderson, who really, epitomized what philanthropy is all about and making the community better. Yeah. And we get to work with people like that to help make organizations like the Toledo Symphony better and continue their work serving the community.
Well, the name Dick Anderson, of course, is immediately familiar to anybody involved in, different pursuits of life. I mean, if you're in agriculture or business, certainly in this area, this community, anybody involved in the arts, even here at WGTE, Dick was a former chairman of the board here, as he was for the Toledo Symphony. This concert I want to mention is happening Friday. It's October 29th, 7:30 p.m., at the Toledo Museum of Art Peristyle. Elaine Trudell, who is here with us, is going to be conducting the concert. Elaine, there's a lot of stuff on here. I want to dive into it, but first I'm going to hand over the stage to Zach to tell us a little bit about Dick Anderson. I mean, can you talk about who he was, not only as a arts patron, but also as a businessman, somebody who affected the community so strongly?
To answer that question is to repeat exactly what you just said. He was a magnificent businessman who impacted the community in so many ways. The first time I met Dick was at a symphony performance, and he had just retired from the CEO's position at the Andersons. And I'd read an article in the Blade about it, and he said he just wants to ride around on his John Deere. And I kind of put it to him with a grin on my face. I said, "You really just going to ride around on your new John Deere?" And and it was absolutely what he wanted to do. And at the end of the day, he was a man who always put on a suit, but he was happiest working with the earth, working with his woodworking. He had enormous hands. They were like paws. And, you just imagine how many hands he had to shake in his career, but also what he did with those hands. Yeah. So he was such an enormous personality, and he affected all of us. I'm so happy I got to know him. I got to work with him. And, up to his end, he was such a fan of the orchestra. And I'm sure over time would revitalize our own faith in what we're doing at difficult times, because he was certain that music and beauty were so important to this community. And if you think about the pandemic, which we've had to survive without Dick, his funeral was immediately before that in early March of 2020. It's his spirit that has taught us the role of arts to get through these tough times. So I think it's a legacy we're very proud to continue upholding.
Yeah,
I think so many times during the pandemic, what we kind of turned inward and said, what would Dick encourage us to do during this? And it was keep turning into the storm, keep doing everything we can to serve the community. And we could hear his voice and his passion for the symphony through all of these challenging times. He really set an example and inspired us to keep going and always be focused on what are we doing to make the community better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Brett, let me ask you, patrons come in different shapes and sizes and flavors and what have you. Some, on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as involvement goes. Some patrons may just give you the money to do what you want to do. Other patrons go to their community. They go to their peers and they say, this is worth supporting. Where did Dick Anderson fall in that line? I think I have a pretty good idea, but how would you characterize his involvement?
I think if there's one person in this community that you could use as an example of somebody who was willing not just to give, but also to help encourage others to give, it would be Dick Anderson.
Yeah.
So much of our foundation in development at the symphony is a result of his outreach and his willingness to stand up and say, this is important to our community, please support it. He would say, I've done it. Now, I'm asking you to join me.
Yeah.
It was never do this. I'm not doing it. It was, I've done this. I think it's important. Please join us.
Well, and he also took such a great interest in the whole canon of classical music, as well as some other stuff here. You've got this list of works that you're playing on the concert, Alain, and it's quite a long list. There are some favorites on here that I assume sort of speak to Dick's experience growing up in the agricultural world. You think of Vivaldi's Four Seasons and Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, his love of nature.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other stuff on here too as well. You want to give us a little preview of what we can expect to hear?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I had the great fortune of my first week here to spend time with Dick and Fran. And it was really, I would say, I've just resigned a new contract with the orchestra. And they were very instrumental on the first week I've been here in 2017 for me to understand what kind of place this was. And that I would be just fine here. I would be not just fine. I would be ecstatic to be here because, just the way they welcome us, they welcome me in the community. Often you meet with a quote unquote patron, or you meet with a sponsor. You go to a restaurant, which is great also. It's kind of neutral territory. You don't know each other all that well. But, Dick and friends come to the house, for lunch. And we go in the little solarium, and a friend comes out with something she cooked. And we have a chat, and we talk about life. And I say, oh, boy, wait a minute. This is going to be great. These people are amazing. And it really taught me a lot. I'm not American. So it taught me a lot about what it is to be a Midwesterner. And what it is to be like a true, how could I say, the true great qualities of Americans, like the generosity,
Yeah.
also. And there was a great deal of compassion there also.
Absolutely.
And anyway, for me, it was very instrumental in feeling great here and feeling that this was an amazing place an amazing community to be in. So when your first encounter is with those people, then you're like, wow, this is amazing. So and we're lucky Fran is still with us, and so this is
Fran is Dick's wife, of course, of many years. Also somebody who is just as involved in the symphony as he was over the
force
years.
of nature herself. Yeah. And when I put this program together, of course, knowing them very well now, I thought that I would do 4 sections to the program. One was, of course, based around classical music, because this is what we do. This is what he really encouraged us. And, sitting on the board is a big thing for symphony. But being chair of the board is almost an act of faith. And he did it twice. It's like I don't know anybody who sat twice as chair of a board on the arts, because it's like fun without the enjoyment sometimes, So the first part I put together in this program, this classical part, I put, of course, fanfare for the common man, because it's funny because you cannot find somebody that's not common like that, but at the same time very common. I mean, you go to his place, he's just a regular guy, but at the same time he's an icon. Everything that happened, and it's a true. It's like meeting one of the last people of like the great generation kind of thing. It's like amazing. Right. Anyway, for me, I was super impressed every time. Impressed by sincerity, by simplicity. Anyway, and then we're going to feature our leader, Kirk Toth, our captain, our concert master, and a movement from the autumn, from the 4 seasons. As you said very very well, it's about harvest, about the seasons, about nature, which was very important to Dick, and staying in the same thing, and even more in the same thing. We're going to do the first movement of Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, and it's interesting because there's a title. It's not just written, Allegro, ma non troppo, whatever. The title is Awakening of Cheerful Feelings Upon Arrival on the countryside, or in the countryside. So it really, that also struck a bell. I said, we have to put this in. That's the last thing I put in the program. I said, oh, this is great. Then we put together a section that is that are people that knew him very well. I mean, you have to understand that Dick knew everybody by first name basis in our orchestra. So, he didn't say, oh yeah, the second oboe. No, it was Michelle, and how is she doing? How's the kid? Are the class family, our 2 clarinet players, they're married together. They have 2 wonderful kids, and they really love those guys, So, and, speaking of, they're going to come and play as a quartet. So the 2 parents and the 2 daughters, they're going to do a quartet, movement of a quartet by Grant Still.
The girls play violin, right?
Violin and cello. Okay. And our 2 clarinet players are going to play the second violin part and the viola part as well. So it's really amazing, because it's the family, the values, and it's people that they really knew and appreciated. I mean, they liked everybody, they loved everybody in the orchestra, but you have to pick a few people. You can't pick 65 people to play a solo. So those. Then we're going to play a little bit of music from an era that is also classical but American, Victor Herbert. It's a little, how do you say, trait d'union, a little dash in the middle. And then our pianist, because, some people don't know, but symphony orchestras have pianists when it's a big symphony. So Valerie Kantorsky, our wonderful pianist, also somebody that their family really knew and loved a lot. The only thing they loved better than that was Chopin. So she's going to play some Chopin, right, but that will lead into a little Gershwin. I don't want to talk too much about it because she has her own way of doing things, but Val has always been very close to them. Has always been somebody that's played in every function we've had. Like when we had the inauguration of the bridge, of the building of the bridge, she was there playing Chopin all day, and they acknowledge it. They stand next to her. It's not just, we need somebody to make some music in the background. No, so everybody stop, listen to Val playing. It's like, anyway, so it's not everybody that's like that. Then we play again a little something from the same era as the Herbert, some Morton Gould, a little symphonette, the Pavane. And then we're going to the 3rd section, which is the jazz section. So we're going to play a salute to the big band. For all that Dick really loved about classical music, he really loved the big band era and the Tommy Dorsey, which is great because I'm a trombone player. Yeah. So, and
I imagine you guys connected on that level too.
Oh yes, very much so. And I'm gonna play some trombone on the show.
Oh, really?
So, okay. I'm going to play. Well, if you have the salute to the big bands, there's going to be some Tommy Dorsey in there. And I'm just going to. So, Garth was our principal trombone, nice enough to let me play one of the solos. And then I'm going to play something with a combo that we have. So it's a piece that's very important for our common history, by Gordon Jenkins. And then after that, we go to that fourth section, which is kind of an Americana section, like the music of America. We started with the Fanfare for the Common Man. It's classic, but it's also, the pictures of America, of freedom, and also of opportunity. And that's something I wanted to touch on over there. So we're going to play thing that's called the American Fun Cheer. So it's a medley of all folk tunes, American folk tunes, but really well crafted together by Custer again. And then we're going to have a special feature, which I won't talk about right now, but people will be there, will be very moved. It's something that the family put together for him. And at the end, we'll finish up with the Simple Gifts, because it's one of the works of music that impersonates his whole being the most.
Yeah.
Again, by Copeland.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah. It sounds like a big jam-packed program, lots of different aspects of Dick's legacy that are being addressed through music. That's great that you managed to put that all together. And I didn't know you were going to play trombone, so that's fun too. Yeah. Zach, when you were talking about Dick Anderson and his great big farmer's hands, I was thinking, well, he should have been playing Rachmaninoff at the piano or something like that,
Well, it's funny you'd mentioned Rachmaninoff. He loved Rachmaninoff. And the last conversation I ever had with Dick, shortly before he died, you start to wonder what your last conversations with somebody you care about are going to be. And in his own way, Dick just ran the show and didn't leave me to have to figure that out. All he wanted to do was talk about how gorgeous Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto was. And I just, you just think about that. And he would, put his big hands up in the air and just say, "Oh, there's no way with these hands you could ever play that." But it's very touching how much he loved this music. And I'm so thrilled for the program that Alain has put together, because it's just it's a very special way to memorialize somebody.
Yeah. This concert is happening on Friday at 7:30 p.m. at the Toledo Museum of Art Paris, styled the Dick Anderson Memorial Concert, the Toledo Symphony under Alain Trudel. More information at toledosymphony.com, or 419-246-8000 is the box office number if you want to get tickets that way. Alain, you mentioned, the first time that you met Dick and that you met his wife, Fran. And I wonder if we could sort of go around the table and talk a little bit about our very first interactions with them, because the first time that I met Dick and Fran was on the airplane when we took the Toledo Symphony to New York to play in Carnegie Hall, and I sat next to them. I don't know whose idea it was to put me next to Dick and Fran on the airplane, because I had never met them before and I didn't know who they were. And I was sitting there eating the Anderson's box dinner that they had provided, and Fran leans over to me and says, "How's the food? How is it?" And I was like, "It's okay." I mean, I didn't make the connection at the time. So, but they were so gracious and so nice and friendly. That was my first impression of them. And then, of course, after that, I learned much more about their work and their activities with the symphony and with WGTE and with other organizations, the Art Museum, what have you. What was your first encounter with Dick or with Dick and Fran, Zach?
Well, I mentioned the first time I spoke to him about his John Deere. I was so impressed by his the common man elements that that Alain was talking about. But I do also remember the first time I met Fran. I was at the Toledo Club finishing a meeting in the Red Room, and she came over to say hello to somebody at our table. And I had seen Fran, but I'd never met Fran. And there was a nice conversation around the table, and as you do with polite company, you're smiling and laughing, not trying to get in the way of the conversation. And then she comes over and just puts her hand out and says, "I'm Fran Anderson." And I said, "Fran, would you like to sit down and join us?" And she said, "No, I am having some friends tonight for supper." And without thinking, I just blurted out, "Well, are they delicious?"
That is like a perfect Zach moment.
That is a Zach moment, right? And she leans over and she said, "I'm gonna like you," and then walked away.
And she did.
It was great. It was great. but just a kinder soul there's never been.
Yeah, Brett, what's the first thing that you ever had to do or say or work with in regards to Dick Anderson, Dick and or Fran as well?
Well, I've had the privilege of having a lot of different interactions with them, so it's hard for me to kind of think back over 20 years, to the first one. But there are two that sort of stick out in my mind. One is, you never forget a Dick Anderson handshake. As Zach said, those big paws and just how, he made you feel like, okay, you're the center of where I'm at right now. And that, as important as he was and the things he did, he was always present with the people that were around him. But I also remember one time, I think around his 90th birthday, maybe asking, what's the secret to your longevity? And before he could answer, Fran jumped in and said something about, all of the years that she's been taking care of him.
Her answer was me.
Yes. Well, and Dick, to his credit, rightfully realized that did play a large role in his long and successful life, and gave credit where credit is due. So,
yeah.
But that that relationship between the two of them and how they were such partners in all they did in the community, just sticks with me. It's just a wonderful example.
Well, it was a fantastic partnership, and still is in some ways, with the legacy ongoing.
Mm-hmm. I've had the same conversation with Dick and Fran, and I remember once Dick said to me that he had been on assisted living for over 60 years because of Fran.
Nice. That's great. Brett, let's take a moment and talk about you a little bit more, because you haven't been here in a couple of years. You came on, as we mentioned, your first day on the job. We sort of threw you in front of the microphone.
He's finally brave enough to come back.
Yeah. But you did a lot of work in development in the years leading up to your job at Toledo Symphony. You worked mostly in academic circles?
Mostly in secondary and higher education.
Okay. So what were some of the groups that you worked with?
Well, I always say I've been blessed to work for, over my career, 5 incredible institutions, in all places where I feel like I have a connection to and am passionate about. I started my development career 24 years ago at St. John's Jesuit, going back to my alma mater. Just out of the practice of stepping out of the practice of law and deciding I want to give this development thing a try and see what happens. Thought I could always go back to law, and 24 years later haven't really entertained that thought. So I was fortunate to go from there, from my alma mater, to run the development program at my parents' high school alma mater in Dayton, Chaminade Julienne, a great school with great history. And then decided to get into the college ranks and worked at Wright State University. Was a fundraiser for their engineering school. Learned a lot. Tested my liberal arts education to kind of follow what was going on in that building.
Yeah.
And then came back to run the program at St. John's for a number of years before jumping again into higher ed at University of Toledo.
Yeah.
And have always loved the symphony. And joked that I wanted to get to more of the concerts and was trying to find a way to do that, and this opportunity came up, and it was a perfect chance to join one of Toledo's great institutions, one of the cultural treasures in this community, and to get to more of the concerts. So
I took the job so I could go to the concerts, right? Yeah.
Well, if he wanted free tickets, it really was quite clear that he had to contribute somehow.
Yeah.
So how free are they?
Everything comes with free.
Nothing is free, my friend.
But I think the other thing, and particularly as we talk about Dick Anderson, you feel this sense of responsibility that this truly is, Toledo Symphony truly is one of Toledo's great cultural treasures, and operates at a level above what most cities this size can even dream of having. And it's really rewarding to be a part of the effort to say, we want this to be at this level 25 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, still bringing this great music to the community. And that's a really fun mission to get up and go to work to support every day.
Yeah. Brett, do you remember the episode that you were on before?
A little bit. We were talking about Masterworks, and it was actually I think I said something about how much I'd always looked forward to seeing that performance, and so getting a chance to do that.
And this was Messiah, actually, at Rosary Cathedral, which the symphony was unable to do during the pandemic. But you guys are coming back and doing that again this December, which will be wonderful. But do you remember, now, was anybody else here on that particular episode with Paul Monachino?
I was.
You
Yep.
were on, Zach. Yeah.
Merwin was here as well.
You guys remember the quiz during that episode?
Well, now you put me on the spot. Of course I remember the quiz.
It was called Great Cathedrals in History, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to ask one or two questions and see if you guys remember, see how much you learned from this quiz from 2 years ago, okay? The cornerstone for this cathedral was laid over 500 years ago. It isn't technically a cathedral, but a type of church given special ceremonial rites. Over 90 popes have been buried here. Is that ringing any bells?
St. Peter's
St. Peter's
Basilica.
in Rome. Or
Okay,
Vatican.
that's enough of that. You guys totally breezed through the quiz. I was just curious, you know.
Can you ask me more questions I've heard the answers to?
We do
I
that.
like this model a lot better.
Yeah. We're gonna revise the quiz now.
One day Merwin is not there, and
That's right.
we don't have a quiz.
I love it.
Brett and Zach are the winners of the quiz.
Well, and if I can just say some things about Brett, this is not a roast, but you know, tying this into Dick Anderson, there was a point when we were searching for our next development director, and we had some excellent applicants from in town and excellent applicants from out of town, and I knew Brett a little bit from his time at St. John's, and I felt that it was important to have somebody who knew this town, because this town is perfect as a Toledoan, but it's tough to get settled in as somebody from outside the area. And, you know, you think about that in our first year of working together, we lost one of our principal leaders of this community. And, you know, Brett's ability to recognize what that meant, to jump right in, you know, to be on the phone with Fran, to you know, envision some of the work we're doing to raise an endowment in Dick's name. You know, that's not something that we would have been able to do with somebody who is moving to Toledo and trying to figure this out on the fly.
Right.
So you know, there are many reasons I love working with Brett Loney, but watching the passion that he brought to this community, and that is a big part of what we do, has been just a huge, huge perk. So,
Well,
thank you.
Thank you. I do hope we have a recording of this that I can save.
We'll excerpt everything Zach says that's nice about you. We'll put it in a nice little MP3 and send it your way.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, instead of a motivational calendar, you know, day to day, you'll have just a little saying from Zach about how glad he is to have you. I mean, it's all about relationships ultimately. And the fact that Brett had worked in this community for some time before he came to you obviously was a great advantage. But let's talk a little bit about arts philanthropy in general, because, you know, there may be some people out there who say, well, what do the arts have to do with business? I mean, why are these successful business people investing in the arts? Mm-hmm. Can we talk a little bit about why it's important to the community?
I always like to say that even if you aren't a fan of the arts, we all want to live in a place that has art. And part of that's a quality of life thing. But one thing that I've always really stressed is that art in any form can help us consider different perspectives, and it can help us go places that we can't necessarily verbalize, and it can challenge us to think about things in different ways. And that's true if you're sitting at the symphony and listening to beautiful music, your mind might go to a certain place. It's true if you're looking at a painting and you're making some space for yourself to have an artistic experience. And those are the things that add beautiful fabric to our day-to-day. So I think we are all a lot more artistic than we give ourselves credit for. And I think we all need it from a biological perspective. So when you think about the performing arts, if there's anything we've learned from the pandemic, is that this is the soul food that we really need. Mm. And I'm just so grateful to our organization that we've been able to continue providing it.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, and it's not only about being...
Can I get that on recording?
It's not only about being artistic. I mean, it's, you know, a lot of revolutionary ideas are great business ideas. Were done while you were having some quote-unquote downtime, what you were doing. And and not just downtown with your mind racing and everything, but music brings you to a place of repose sometimes, and brings you to a place where you can actually have some introspection. You can have your own private introspection that has nothing to do with the Beethoven symphony you're listening to. It just brings you to that place. And very often it's difficult to go to that place with nothing happening around you, or with while thinking of what you're going to do next. But just that setting that we're setting up, and it's great to have introspection. Of course, now with the pandemic, there's been a trend to people are cooking more at home. People are doing slow food and slow art, I like to call it. Not only 3-minute snippets of things, which is also okay sometimes. But people seem to be more ready to go back to accepting a longer development of something, and longer introspection, and our priorities in crazy world, and it seems like our priorities are set a little bit more straight sometimes with that. I mean, it's of course there's incredible drama that has come with the pandemic, but there's this time that for private reflection and thinking of life, and thinking of the quality of life we want to have, that we say that the arts, they also define us, who we are as a community. Yeah. We're not an orchestra in Toledo. We're the Toledo Symphony. So you would transpose this orchestra and bring it to, I don't know, another city, Cleveland or Omaha, I don't know. It wouldn't be the same, because we're connected to Toledo. We're connected to our public, to our audience. When I put programs together with Merwin very often, I think of our public, I mean, there's not another place where you program certain things, and, here, and what we want our public to discover, the population to discover, and also things that really makes them feel like, all fuzzy inside and good, is different everywhere, Yeah. So you build something that has to do with your community. And a little bit from what Zach said is that maybe not everybody likes music, but we have a utility, and that's something that in the past, and not us, but I mean, in the last 100 years, the symphonies have not done a great job of communicating that they're relevant. And the last 20 years, it has changed a lot. Some of it because they were dying. And we have to say, we have to, it's like a dinosaur. We have to reinvent ourselves. But a lot of it, orchestras our size, it's been always a way of life. I mean, we're always in tune with our community, and we always divide the orchestra up. I mean, you have to think this orchestra does, before Christmas, and when it's not a pandemic, the 25 days before Christmas, I mean, we play 25 concerts in the community. So it has a utility. It has something that is that we share with everybody, and they share with us. And this is really, I mean, the arts are, even if you don't like music, you like what the arts does to a population. It's not just beauty; it's just when you're busy with that, you're not busy with other things that can be negative. We bring positivity and introspection, which is not an easy thing to do, right?
Yeah.
In our crazy world. So
well, I mean, when you're talking about the value of a symphony orchestra such as the TSO, like you say, Elaine, there are many things that factor into it. The value to the community in terms of just offering wonderful, beautiful music, offering discovery. Mm-hmm. You talk about the concerts you do at Christmas time, or have done at Christmas time, that enriches the sacred offerings of many churches in the area as well. Mm-hmm. So it has an impact there. And on top of all of that, think of what the economic impact is of the arts in this area, in this community. I mean, you have some fantastic institutions here involved in the arts, and they all draw from various pools of donors. Some of them overlap. But the people that are fueling the funding of all of these arts organizations, like Dick and Fran Anderson, have left a lasting impact because they were arts organizations, because they've stood the test of time, and they'll be remembered, for decades and centuries, perhaps, into the future.
Oh, absolutely. And, there's a misconception out there that, if you invest in the arts, there's no nothing comes
Return.
back. Yeah, there's no return. And there's studies that say $1 invested in the arts brings back in the community, restaurants and everything, up to $11. So it's 11 for 1. I mean, it's a pretty good investment in your community and your way of life.
What about 30 cents? That's about all I have in my pocket right now. How far can you take me on 30 cents?
Well, I keep putting my 2 cents in and doing okay. So you probably do okay with 30.
Thank you for your donation.
That is tax deductible.
A true fundraising executive. Yeah.
There are some wonderful studies that have been done at the state level as to what the creative industries bring to our communities in Ohio, and it's exceptional to look at what just this organization does, and they look at it from an employment perspective, but also an economic development perspective. So we ran the numbers a couple of years ago. I think there was each dollar earned by a member of our organization, and I would not say that we're overpaid in general, creates $1,000 of economic impact.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense when you start thinking about where people are coming from. They're moving here, they're buying houses, they're moving their families, they're spending tuition dollars, they're looking for things to eat and places to go. And that ends up being a real development perspective of what the arts can contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. So my 30 cents would go a lot longer in that calculation, I think, right?
I was told there'd be no math.
And I think great cities have great art and great culture, and as the businesses in this community try to attract talent, it's important that they can say we have cultural treasures like the Toledo Symphony here, and you can access great music and great culture in this community. We fight that perception that people not from Toledo don't know how good we have it here, and there's probably a little bit of value in that, so that we don't double the size of the population and do away with some of our quality of life issues that are so good. But it also is a challenge. How do we overcome that perception and get people to come and be a part of the businesses that are here and contribute their talents?
Well, you raise a great point. Yeah. The community, the value of the community, and bringing people into the community. Mm-hmm. I mean, you talked about that a little bit, Zach, in terms of bringing in employees of the symphony to the city. But Brett, looking at the wider picture, let's make this an attractive community for everyone, not only for the, people coming in to work in the business community, but people coming in for the tourism community. You don't think of Toledo as necessarily a tourist hotspot, but certainly in Northwest Ohio, we have a lot of wonderful things here to attract people, including the symphony and symphony concerts. Let me ask you, gentlemen, while I think of this, how do you, aside from this memorial concert that you're giving, how do you honor the legacy of somebody like Dick Anderson and Dick and Fran Anderson and their impact on the orchestra? So moving forward, how do you plan to fulfill, I guess, the potential of their legacy?
I'll start. I think we all have thoughts on that, but it was very clear as we started thinking of ways to honor Dick's legacy with the symphony that we owe the endowment that we have and the long-term funding that we have largely to his efforts to reach out to people in the community and build that, and his willingness to say, this is important, would you join me in helping to build this long-term support? So it was an obvious kind of place to go as we worked with the family and the company and our supporters to create an endowment in his name to support the symphony long-term and to help us continue to be the organization that we need to be in this community.
And as Brett said, our endowment is really a function of Dick's passion for helping us have long-term sustainability. So one of our colleagues said shortly after Dick passed away, you can just imagine, Dick banging his hands on the table and say, what else do I have to do to give you guys long-term stability? And he is now doing so from a memorial perspective. So this concert is I think, the beginning of a celebration of that relationship, and a way that we can really honor and respect the vision that Dick had for us, and that he has for the orchestra. So this community will continue to be inspired by and touched by Dick's generosity.
Yeah, on the subject of, we're talking about philanthropy also, but to bring it back to Dick also, is that it shows us also that philanthropy is money, yes, but it's mainly relationships. Is that, do you hit it off? I mean, do we have same goals? He wants to build a solid and beautiful community for where he lived. We want to do the same. So, it's not, sometimes people think it's just about, Brett's job is getting money. It's building relationships, the foundation of, the economic foundation of the orchestra is all these really strong relationships in the community. Very often you have a relationship with people that doesn't turn out into money at that moment, but they just have an interest in what you're doing, or curiosity on what you're doing, and they say, well, we'll follow you. I mean, this is interesting. And you start, like, since I've been here, I've made a lot of friends, but I've never gone out on a, meeting people to get a check. It's never done. It's like, are we building some friends? Do we have more friends? I mean, when you say it takes a village, I mean, to run a symphony, it takes a whole world. It's even with Mahler, it takes a universe. But it's really all about relationships. And the relationships that Dick was able to have with everybody, not just us. I mean, he helped. Yes, he helped us tremendously. I mean, he's instrumental on having a symphony in town. I mean, keeping a symphony in town. But not only that, he was in many, many other things. And it's always relationships. And you always have to, and that's something you can do very well in the U.S. because you have some means to do it because of the taxation. I know, because I'm from Canada. Yes. Anyway, let's not get into that. But you have the means to choose, what is close to your heart, and what really you think you can make a difference in something that interests you in your community. And the relationships we've had with the family, and with Dick and with Fran, let's not forget Fran. Oh my God, she's a force of nature, is an example of that.
Well, the impact of Dick Anderson and Fran Anderson will last for a long, long time into the future. But for the time being, their legacy and impact are being celebrated with this concert that you're putting on, the Dick Anderson Memorial Concert. It's Friday evening, October 29th, 7:30 p.m. at the Toledo Museum of Art, Paris style. Alain Trudel conducting the Toledo Symphony, and a wide-ranging program of music that we spoke about. Also with Alain picking up his trombone and playing a little bit as well. You can find more information about that concert at toledosymphony.com or 419-246-8000. This program is a production of WGTE Public Media in collaboration with our sponsor, the Toledo Symphony, with generous support from the Rita Barber Kern Foundation. You can download episodes of our program as a podcast by going to our website at wgte.org/lab. You can also subscribe to us through your podcast app of choice, including Apple and Google Podcasts. Don't forget to check out all the upcoming events at the Symphony by visiting their website at toledosymphony.com and their various social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find the TSO streaming platform online. That's at stream.artstoledo.com. My thanks to Zach Vassar, Alain Trudel, and our special return guest, Brett Loney. I'm Brad Cresswell. This has been Toledo Symphony Lab from FM 91.